Good evening, I'm Pinky Webb. Tonight we ask the questions, we tackle the issues, we clarify matters, and we get on point. PDP-Laban is seeking a manual recount of votes in this year's senatorial race. The petitioner found alleged irregularities in the midterm polls. These include the supposed 17 million overvotes and 6 million missing ballots. One of the party's senatorial bets clarifies they do not intend to take a Senate seat but only want to ensure the law is implemented. Let's get on point with PDP-Laban senatorial candidate Attorney Jimmy Bondoc and legal counsel Attorney Israelito Torreon. Attorneys, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras. Pleasure to have you both together in one show tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. Our pleasure also.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Okay. Attorney, umpisahan na po natin. Dalawang attorney ang kausap ko. So, hopefully marami akong matutunan dito. First, let's talk about the grounds that you included in your petition asking the Supreme Court for a manual recount of senatorial votes, which was filed, I believe, maybe 4 days ago.
April 3.
The first one was
the
April
first one,
3,
April
but
3.
the supplemental petition was about 2 days, 3
2
days
to 3
ago.
days ago. Okay, ano po yung nilalaman noon? Bakit kailangan mag-manual recount?
Well, simply because there is a law concerning it, which COMELEC intentionally chooses not to apply. I say intentionally because it is very clear, Section 31 of 9369. 9369, by the way, is an amendatory law to Republic Act 8436. And Section 31 clearly provides that there shall be manual counting in the precinct level before the results are transmitted electronically to the proper servers. This was not followed, even if we already sent demand letters to the Commission on Elections prior to the elections. And we even filed a petition before the Supreme Court. And they were already on notice about it, yet they never bothered to implement the law. The law may be hard, but that is the law. Dura lex sed lex. It should be implemented. They refused to do that, hence we have to file a petition for mandamus.
Attorney Bondoc, what about you?
Well, it's the same. For us, the letter of the law is clear, no? In other issues, kasi usually there is a difficult question of law. But here, it's very clear that in fact, it's not manual recount, Pinky, no? It's manual count. They did not even implement, in the first place, the manual count at the precinct level. Marami pong nalilito kasi they think it's archaic. We're going to go back to the Stone Age like that. No, that's always the reaction.
Yung ano na naman, oo.
Yung ganon. But first of all, electronic voting is not tantamount to electronic counting. No, we vote electronically, but we count manually. And we transmit the results electronically from the precinct level. Pero yung sa precinct level, bilangin po natin. Otherwise, the poll watchers will have nothing to do.
But when was this done?
Well,
when was this last done?
Actually, it's not a question of when was this last done because the law requires it. It is just that I do not understand why the Commission on Elections would insist on full automation. Even in the United States of America, you don't get full automation because they know that there are hackers, there are malwares present in a pure automation process. And that is why it was clearly provided in the amendatory law, Section 31, that there shall be manual counting.
Yeah, you know, actually, pinuntahan ko siya. I was trying to study this, no? Because I asked you, attorneys, kailan yung huling nag-manual count? Kailan ho ba? Kahit na naintindihan ko sinasabi niyong, never mind when, because it's part of the law. But when was the last time that you recall? Prior to 1998, maybe?
I think after that, it was still manual count. I think in 2001, it was still...
Meron pa po.
Yes.
So you're talking about Republic Act 9369.
Yes.
Doon po sa inyong petition, an act amending Republic Act 8436.
Yes.
An act authorizing the COMELEC to use an automated election system in the May 11, 1998 national or local elections. Pinuntahan ko po si Section 31. Let me read it for everybody's consumption.
Yes, please.
Manner of counting votes. In addition to the requirement in the fourth paragraph of Section 12 of Republic Act 6646, memorize niya.
That's about poll watchers.
Ito yun.
Okay, yan yung unang
Sabi
sinabi
ko sa
niyo.
inyo, dalawang abogado yung
No,
kaharap
it's
ko.
confusing eh.
Kaya
Go ahead,
nga, that's
please.
why I want to
Yes,
understand
yes.
it. Of the
Yes.
Omnibus Election Code, in reading the official ballots during the counting, the chairman,
1-0.
the poll clerk, the third member shall assume such positions as to provide the watchers and the members of the public, as may be conveniently accommodated in the polling place, an unimpeded view, okay, of the ballot being ready by the chairman
No,
of the
that's
election.
actually being read.
Being read.
Nagkamali dito.
typographical ano
Okay.
yan,
Being read. Where was I?
by the chairman. Yes.
Of the election return and the tally board being simultaneously accomplished by the poll clerk,
Yes.
and the third member, especially without touching any of these election documents. The table shall be cleared of all necessary writing paraphernalia. Any violation of this requirement shall constitute an election offense punishable. So, pasensya na po, hindi ako abogado. Saan ho siguro para tagalogin natin, saan ho sinabi na kailangan magkaroon ng manual count
Yes,
dito sa Section 31?
It makes certain reference to certain laws, right?
Yes.
So merong reference dyan to Section 210 of the Omnibus Election
Correct.
Code. So you have
Opo.
to read that too. And nandun po nakalagay, it's kind of absurd sa totoo, but it's the law. Sinabi po doon na may blackboard, susulatin nyo in 4 vertical lines and 1 diagonal line. Tapos sinabi rin po that for every 100 ballots, ibalot ng rubber band. Nakalagay sa batas eh. So that
And
is
that's
the
under
law.
the Omnibus Election Code. That's
Which
why
has
that's
not been
part of your
repealed.
petition.
Yes,
Oo.
yes.
Kasi ang sinight nyo dito is RA 9369 and the Omnibus Election Code.
Yes,
Which
which makes
necessarily
reference.
includes 6646 as well as 210 of the Omnibus Election Code. In addition to, right?
Opo.
Yeah. So that is why the law is very clear. Plain meaning rule, meaning when the law is very clear, you do not have to interpret. You just apply it.
Yeah.
But
As is where is, no?
yes.
May I make an observation? If you notice, sabi mo, kailan ba last in-implement? Kasi po, ang nangyari, no, tayo ngayon, gulong-gulo sa batas, nandyan pa rin, di ba? Kasi it's the gradual disuse, the gradual custom changing, the practice to the contrary, di ba? Na unti-unti siyang, meron pa ring manual dito, wala na. That's why we don't really know when it stopped. So we're here as, I suppose, as watchdogs, no, to let's implement the law. Kasi laws are repealed only by subsequent ones.
Right.
And their violation or non-observance shall not be excused by disuse
Or customs to the
custom or
contrary.
practice to the contrary.
So,
That's Article 7 of the
ang
Civil
mahanap po
Code.
natin yan dito nga sa Omnibus Election Code, Section 210. Okay? That's the law that you're using in accordance with this RA 9369.
Yes, ang
Tama ba?
title nun, Manner of Counting Votes.
Manner of counting votes. At doon nga nakasulat yung 1, 2, 3, 4, tapos
May mga
ayan,
taras,
five.
mga
Yun yung
ganon.
taras
Oo.
po.
At saka, pati sa 9369, an unimpeded view. Merong mga ganyan.
I read that, unimpeded
nandun.
view.
Kailangan na may unimpeded. Paano magka-unimpeded view yung counting kung
Digital.
digital? Diretso, hindi mo na nga makita eh. O, diretso na lang. Shoot. O,
Well,
tapos,
my question is, attorneys, no, if this is so, why is it that ang alam natin ay random manual count tayo aasa for the verification of the tallies of votes? Hindi ho ba yan na yung ating nalaman na RMA, random manual, or RMC, tama ba? Or RMA, random manual audit.
RMA.
if I may answer,
Yes.
that is a misreading of the law.
Yes.
Because the law does not require it. The law only requires manual counting per precinct. The RMA that you are discussing, ma'am,
Okay.
yes, is that that concerns the questionable order of the COMELEC again to have random manual audit, tapos isa lang. Sila pa magpili kung saan.
So that's not random, first of all. No?
Oo, bakit kayo ang magpili kung saan. Anong klaseng random manual audit yan? Kayo pang magpipili?
Designated.
Oo, designated pa. Anong tinatago ninyo? Kaya nga, sana, i-implementa lang sana yung batas.
Okay.
Kasi ang nasa pakay talaga niyan ay wala nang dayaan. Makikita, may clear data tayo kada precinct, kaya para pag-transmit niyan, may clear data yung mga lawyers.
What was supposed to happen first? As you are defending the manual count before the transmission, paano ho ang dapat na idea of the votes being counted and tallied? In your opinion? Or
Well, the reason why we filed on April 3 pa lang is because there had been rumors already of certain irregularities. But rumors lang naman yan. So we just went back to the law because we knew that the COMELEC already had plans of, first of all, implementing the online voting overseas.
I
which
know that
is-
you were opposed to that
Of
as well.
course, because the law clearly states may balota dapat. Sa online, wala, parang Facebook likes na lang yon. Heart, kung gusto mo si Jimmy Bondoc, thumbs up. I mean, it's not the way it's supposed to be implemented. May I make lang a personal observation? No? Ang
ahead,
nangyari kasi talaga dito, no, yung gradual na disuse and all that, we are an evolving democracy, no? Na pati pagdating sa botohan, we haven't gotten our act together. So before it goes completely off rail, no, ayusin po natin para po, this is not for the seat. This is not for the seat of power. It's for a democracy.
Tsaka nakakatawa kasi, ma'am, is that under Republic Act 10590, Overseas Voting Act, Sections 23, 24, 25, and 27 mandates only two kinds of voting overseas. Personal and by mail. Tapos yung counting on-site. Batas yan. Yung COMELEC, maski walang amendatory law, nag-implement ng online voting based only on their mere resolutions. Pwede ba
A
yan?
resolution by the COMELEC and
Yes,
bank.
oo. So 11061, 11077, 11079, 11081. Hindi naman po pwede na ang COMELEC na yun ang Kongreso. Wala pang ang batas niyan, inimplementa mo. Dito naman, dito sa domestic voting, may batas, ayaw mong i-implementa. Yan po ang naging sitwasyon po
So
natin.
those are all pending?
Yes.
Pati sa online voting, which
Yes.
you also opposed, as we mentioned a while
These are
ago.
all
Lahat po yan
indicated
pending.
in the supplemental petition.
So once and for all, this has to be decided on.
Yes.
Kasi I'll be honest with you, I didn't know about since we shifted to automated, that kailangan may manual voting, manual counting.
In the precinct
In
level.
the precinct level. Alam ko po yun kasi dati pong tumakbo ang tatay ko. Alam ko po kung ano yun and what that entails. So I didn't know that we were still supposed to do that now according to you, according to the law that you are citing. So what I'm trying to say is that this has to be decided on. If you are actually on the right, kung kayo po, yung inyong petition or hindi.
Well, in light of the supervening events, no, since the election, I think it's in the interest of justice, di ba? Parang for me, the Supreme Court, we respectfully kneel before them, no? Na sana desisyonan nila because otherwise this conversation will persist.
Right.
At nandyan yung 2028 and then it's capable of repetition yet evading review.
So you were obviously running under a PDP and you ranked 17, I believe, in the last elections. Do you think that you should have made it to the Magic 12, Attorney Bondo?
Pwede akong magsagot na lang? Oo.
Wag ikaw kasi
Bakit po
bias ka,
kayo?
kaibigan kita eh.
Kasi tingin
Mas
ko talaga...
bias ka kasi ikaw yun.
Oo nga eh. At tingin ko talaga
kayo po
number 6
muna,
ito
Attorney
eh.
Bondoc, tapos si Attorney Torreon. Go ahead. Do you really think you made it?
No, the reason why I do not make any, I don't surmise, no, dyan. Kasi we know how this looks, no? We know how this looks. Anyone will interpret this as parang sour grapings or loser. I know that. I am not a child, no? But I really just want the law implemented.
Apa.
Kasi po, ang tagal na nating may question dyan sa election automation na yan. At its impetus, nagtataka na tayo, nagtatalo na, but in whispers. But ngayon, kasi since we're so interconnected, ang bilis na ng reklamo.
You know, I asked that, Attorney Bondo, kasi during a speech of Vice President Sara Duterte, I recall she said that,
Kuala Lumpur yan.
sa Malaysia, you were
I was
there.
I was
Kasama
there.
sila.
Andun po
kasama
si
sila.
Attorney Mata?
Yes,
At
Dr. Mata and
Dr.
Attorney
Mata and
Hinlo.
Attorney Hinlo, right?
Si JV.
And she was saying that tapos na ang eleksyon, pero dapat itong tatlo ay pasok. Because sabi niya, not in the exact words, may fraud doon sa election. Yun po ang sinabi ni Vice President. At dapat daw kayong tatlo, nakasama niya doon sa Kuala Lumpur, ay pasok, ay nanalo. I think yun ang ginamit niyang salita. Kaya tinatanong ko po sa inyo, did you think you were really going to be part of the match?
I respectfully make it clear to your viewers talaga that I make no allegation of any sort regarding that. Sa batas po talaga ako.
Si Vice President na lang po
Oh, well, that's
nagsabi
her
nun.
personal opinion. And,
At saka si Atty. Torreon, you were saying that number 6?
Sa tingin ko talaga. Kasi,
Based
ano
on
yun
what, sir?
Kasi nakita ko yung trend. I was representing Pastor Apollo Sikibuloy in the rallies. No? I traveled from, hindi naman literally from mula Apari hanggang Hulo, pero more or less ganun. Nakikita ko yung reaction ng mga tao. And na-surprise na lang kami doon sa resulta. Na meron pa nga mga, na-cite namin doon sa petition na parang nagkaroon ng programming, 42 si Pastor. Ganon. Tapos siya naman, may mga numbers naman na parang recurring. Na yun na nga, this could have been remedied if there was a manual counting in the precinct level.
Isama na po natin yung ilan pang parte ng inyong petisyon, yung sinasabing overvotes. Tell us more
nandun yan.
about it.
Nandun yan. Oo.
Go ahead, Atty. Torreon. Ano po yung mga nilalaman pa ng petisyon?
Well, actually, first, under Rule 10, Section 6 of the Rules of Court, you are allowed to file a supplemental pleading, which would cover transactions, occurrences, and events which transpired after the filing of the original petition. So we had to cite there all the developments that transpired after we filed it on April 3. Like, for example, on April 5, there were Starlink, materials, devices that were found in Davao City, of all places. And the author thereof happens to be connected with a political family in the Davao region.
Yung author, yung sinasabi niyo pong
Yung company.
pagmamayari ng bahay na yon.
Oo, hindi. Yung company na nakakuha nung kontrata na iyon.
Okay.
Oo, tapos, second, meron po kasing iba pang nangyari. Yung 6 million na until ngayon, hindi pa klaro kung anong nangyari doon sa 6 million missing ballots. Wala pong explanation po doon. Tapos, nung April 13, tinuloy yung online voting even if meron na kaming petition. Oo. Tapos on May 10, 2 days before the elections, nalaman na lang natin yung 3.4 na approved ng Technical Evaluation Committee, 3.5 ang ginamit. Oo. Tapos, in the election day itself, meron yung 17 million na overvotes. Ang daming taong nagreklamo na iba yung lumalabas doon sa kanilang mga balota din. May mismatch between the votes and the votes appearing on the VVPAT, Voters Verified Paper Audit Trail. And then, meron yung violation ng kanilang COMELEC resolution. Ano yun? Hindi natin alam, meron palang data center 3. Ang nakasaad dun sa kanilang COMELEC resolutions, mayroong automatic transmission of the results to the transparency servers.
Saka sa COMELEC.
Oo, tsaka sa COMELEC. Bigla na lang, sa Bisaya pa, gisuyop sa USA, tapos prinosis mo na doon bago kinoward. Hindi yun ang nakalagay sa batas. And how can you call it transparency when it is subject to a certain funnel? And you do not know what happened to that funnel. They will give you a lot of explanations, but that is not what is in their law, and that is not what is cited in their, these resolutions.
We need to take a very short break. We'll be back with PDP-Laban Senatorial candidate, Attorney Jimmy Bondoc, and legal counsel, Attorney Israelito Torreon. Stay tuned. This is On Point. You're watching On Point, still with us, PDP-Laban Senatorial candidate, Attorney Jimmy Bondoc, and legal counsel, Attorney Israelito Torreon. Attorney Bondoc, you were saying you're explaining during the break, no, yung kinukwento kanina ni Attorney Torreon. Go ahead, sir.
Well, it's quite simple, no, if we put it in layman's terms. Ang nakalagay po sa resolution at sa batas, from the VCM, the vote counting machine, diretso po ang transmission yan sa COMELEC and then sa transparency server.
So, dalawa po.
Opo,
Okay.
kasi ito yung pangbangga dito. No? So, simultaneous po dapat yan. And ang nangyari is nagkaroon bigla ng entity na parang third party na Data Center 3. Ang explanation po ng COMELEC is pagdating po dito, parang pinoprocess lang yung data bago ipadala dito. So, ang allegations ng iba, dito daw, allegedly, dinadaya Ako naman po, I'm being very clear. Wala akong sinasabing dinadaya. Let's focus on the fact na bakit pumupunta sa isang third party na server, Data Center 3. Yun lang po, yun lang po. Kasi po, please, let's be fair sa aking sinasabi. Wala kami sinasabing dinaya. O baka siya meron. Ako wala. Ako wala.
Yeah, you've been very clear about
Yes, but
that.
it shouldn't go through
Yeah, I
this.
understand what you're saying. Meron tayong dapat proseso na dadaanan yung VCM.
Yes, and
as you mentioned a while ago.
You know, I'm
and all
also-
of a sudden, by surprise,
May
it
ganyan.
passes through, it diverts somewhere else.
Yes,
Okay?
and I just want to make clear na the reason why I don't want to make allegations of cheating is because red herring issue eh. Hindi yun yung point eh. Na-break na po yung batas just by transmitting it to the Data Center 3. Tapos na usapan doon eh.
Yeah. And you don't want that to happen again. You wanted a clear way of actually really...
Yes, at sa totoo po, dapat may managot doon. Because it's a violation of the law.
Okay.
Oo
Attorney
nga.
Torreon.
Ang sa akin kasi, what is the mandate of the Commission on Elections? Article 9C, Section 2, Paragraph 1, in relation with Section 52, Article 7 of the Omnibus Election Code, mandates po that they should adopt a free, honest, credible elections and transparent. Prior to the elections, in-explain ganito lahat ha, pag yung ACM, Automated Counting Machine, ang resulta po dito, diretso yan, automatic yan. Bigla na lang ang election process. Meron palang data server 3. Kailangan magdaan dito bago ilan. Anong tawag mo niyan? Hindi na transparency server yun. Ano na lang siya? Receiver from a certain unknown entity na nalaman natin on election day itself. Where is transparency there? No? So yun ang aming, nasyak na lang kami, ano yan, bakit ini-explain ni George na on the day of the election itself na pinadaan pa sa data server 3? We were never informed about it beforehand.
And that forms part of the petition as well.
Yes.
Ito pong data server.
Yes.
Kasama po doon.
Yes.
Okay.
Data Center 3.
Data Center 3. In the event, gentlemen, that the Supreme Court acts on this, ano ho ba yung magiging timeline dito? Kasi at some point, di ba, COMELEC
big question.
loses jurisdiction over even the ballots or the counting or the proclamation. Kasi pupunta na yan, kung may questions on senatorial candidates, it's going to go to the Senate Electoral Tribunal. Hindi ho ba? Sa House, pupunta sa House Electoral Tribunal. What happens?
Well, that's the reason why we're trying to invoke the expanded jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Kasi ang expanded jurisdiction nila sa konstitusyon natin is grave abuse of discretion amounting to lack or excess of jurisdiction, di ba? So, ibig sabihin, kahit po merong jurisdiction dyan, may jurisdiction ng Supreme Court, kahit anong form ng grave abuse of discretion.
So, what does that mean? Ano hong posibleng mangyari kung merong expanded jurisdiction ng Supreme Court?
Well, of course, they can decide the case. Kumbaga, it is a jurisdiction na hindi naman supersedes the HRET, but it's concurrent. Pwede nilang desisyonan. And that's what we're hoping for.
Sorry,
because,
anong desisyon? Desisyon na what? Unconstitutional? Mali? Ganun ba?
Yes.
Pwede. Oo, ang nakabuti lang kasi dito, Ma'am Pinky, is that na-file namin before the election. So, klaro ito. So, even if what happens during the election, since justiciable issues na ito, pwede talaga ito madesisyonan ng Supreme Court. Kasi, yun nga, yung mga local candidates, ako, I'm not saying pwede nga sila maka-file ng petition for intervention na, may question din kami doon sa aming supplemental petition. Pag mag-grant yun, they can file petitions for intervention and they can cite also particular irregularities that transpired in the local elections. That's a legal probability simply because of the fact that these issues were lodged prior to the election.
Right.
In accordance with expanded jurisdiction, since there is here a clear violation of the law and therefore a grave abuse of discretion, then the Supreme Court can act.
And what happens if they favor your petition?
Well, there are two possibilities. The court may order para maturuan kayo ng leksyon. O, COMELEC, problema ninyo yan, i-implementa yan. Posible ba yan? Meron silang pera meron silang civics meron silang 21 billion ate na unused.
So, manual manual count. Okay.
Posible yan. Or, doon naman, practical naman po kami. Kung depende na po sa Supreme Court. Para ma-establish yung accountability, they may choose only the certain pilot provinces. We leave it to the discretion of the Supreme Court.
You know, if I may add, sa Omnibus Election Code, sinite din namin yan sa Section 255. Meron doon judicial counting of votes. No? Ibig sabihin, when the interest of justice so require, the court can order the counting of ballots. Sila magbibilang.
But
why not?
I understand. So that is a possibility with regards to your petition. Pero yung pong ibang sinite ninyo sa inyong petition, such as nagkaroon po ng data, server 3 ho ba? Nagkaroon ng, sorry, I keep forgetting, data center 3.
Yes.
And then yung overvotes, yung 17 million votes excluded, etc. Ano po ang ending nun? Sabihin natin magkaroon ng pumayag, let's say, hypothetically, let's do manual count in select areas or provinces. What happens to the other petitions or questions you have regarding the conduct of the polls?
Can I answer?
Go ahead, sir.
Data server 3. Wala yan sa resolution ninyo. Wala yan sa batas. Huwag mo i-implementa yan. Yung ito naman, wala yan sa batas, wag mo i-implementa yan. So there will be clear-cut parameters which the Supreme Court can state in accordance with the law. So the law, since it is very clear, kayo COMELEC, eto sundin nyo ha kung mag-counting kayo.
Pero sa susunod na eleksyon, magiging klaro na hindi na pwede magkaroon ng data 3, etc.
At the very least.
Actually, yun talaga ang end namin, ma'am. Sana, maski hindi ito mag-grant, kasi practical naman kami, maklaro na sa 2028. Maski na magdesisyon ng Korte Suprema, malapit na yung 2028, may clear parameters niya. Kaya para hindi tayo magkagulo as a nation and as a country.
Attorney Bondoc, would you like to add to that? I'm gonna shift quickly to another subject.
Yeah, well, the sad state of affairs po sa atin is kung minsan there's a clear Supreme Court decision, like for example, on pork barrel, meron naman tayong Bellica versus Choa. But we all know now that meron pa ring nangyayari na pork barrel na allocation. No? So, I don't know. To answer your question, hindi ko alam kung ano mangyayari. But the best for now is to get a decision para malinaw.
I guess, sorry, I need to follow up. The reason I asked that is because you're questioning, in my mind, the conduct of the polls.
Yes.
Bakit hindi nagka-manual count? Bakit nagka-data center 3? Bakit nagkaroon ng 17 million votes excluded? It makes the conduct of the polls questionable.
Yes.
Hence, the results could also be questionable. Yun ang gusto ko pong tanungin sa inyo.
But,
I know you were saying that hindi mo
Yes.
plano na malagay ang pangalan mo sa Magic 12.
Yes.
Pero kung nakasaad po sa petition ninyo na questionable yung naging conduct ng 2025 polls, how does that mean in terms of the credibility of the winners?
Well, that's according to the judicial power of the Supreme Court. Sila bahala. And it also depends on the timing of the decision. Halimbawa, baka moot na. As an absurd example, baka 6 years from now nila desisyonan. Tapos na yung termino ng mga nanalo. Meron din tayong tinatawag sa batas na doctrine of operative fact, no? Na kapag meron ng legal implications, hindi mo na ma-reverse out of equity. No? So, hindi ko role na alamin kung ano po yung magiging resulta. My goal as a lawyer, as an officer of the court, is to get, hopefully, a decision from the Supreme Court para masettle yung actual controversy.
All right. Attorney, quickly, I'll just shift dito sa impeachment ni Vice President. Any update on this, on certain petitions lodged before the Supreme Court as well?
Well, I just filed a few days ago a supplemental
Supplemental.
petition likewise against the impeachment of VP Sara because she's effectively impeached. The question now is whether or not she should be found guilty. And we humbly posited to the Supreme Court that the impeachment trial cannot cross over to the 20th Congress.
Yeah. So yun po yung supplemental motion ninyo, which
Yes
you also
po.
filed recently.
Yes
A quick question on that. I think it was the Senate President Jesus Escudero who said that if they vote on this in the 20th Congress, it already appears that it continued on to the 20th Congress. Kasi yung ang petition po ninyo na hindi pwedeng tumawid, tama ho ba, from
Yes,
the 19th to the
yes,
20th?
yes,
Pero
yes.
kapag nagkaroon ng voting sa 20th Congress come July 28 or 29 or July 30, tumawid na ho siya, effectively, dito sa 20th Congress. What do you say to that?
Well, it may or may not because the new Senate may also adopt it. It has that jurisdiction likewise kung gustuhin nila. Pero of course, nandun na naman ako, questionin ko na naman sa Supreme Court kasi karapatan ko rin yun.
Yeah.
So that we will have a clear ruling in that regard. Kasi dito kasi yung ibang, alam ko naman yung point of view ng kabila. Ina-apply nila yung practices sa United States of America as well as in the United Kingdom na hindi naman po applicable dito sa ating bansa. Ina-apply nila yung ruling ng Supreme Court Arnold versus Nazareno which was decided under the aegis of the 1935 Constitution. Meron pong mas applicable po dito yung Balag versus Senate and Nery versus Senate. Alam ko naman yung counter nila doon. Pero ang sa akin lang, kaya nga yung 20th Congress, iba talaga siya. Kasi when they assume office, they have to pass their own rules of procedure, which is different and separate from the 19th Congress. That in itself is proof that it is a separate Congress. Why? Because why would the 20th Congress adopt its own rules of procedure in the first place when it is just but a continuation of the 19th Congress? Tama? So, yun pa lang, hindi pala ito continuation. Bakit mo ipupush na continuation ito?
Pero dahil po kayong dalawa ay abogado din at nakasaad po sa Article 11 of the Constitution that the Senate shall try and decide. Kapag tinanong niyo po yung mga abogado, ibig sabihin, kailangan magkaroon ng paglilitis at kailangan magkaroon ng desisyon. Paano ho mangyayari yung sinasabing hindi dapat mag-continue from the 19th to 20th Congress kung hindi pa po tinatry, hindi pa po nagkakaroon ng paglilitis at hindi po magkaroon ng desisyon. Attorney Bondoc, as last words, please.
Well, it's a question of timing, no? First of all, hindi naman sila nag-file niyan eh. Lower house ang nag-file and they filed it, in my opinion, belatedly. So pag inabutan po ng mga facts na are unavoidable, such as time, such as the conclusion of the 19th Congress, wala po tayong magagawa. Yung shall, I know it's mandatory. Pero what do you do if the jurisdiction has ended, in their opinion? So I think it's a question of timing. And lastly, you know, we can deny it as much as we want, but impeachment is a political process.
Yeah, it is.
Political yan. Hindi tayo naghahanap dyan ng parang right and wrong really, but it's political. So it depends now on the new batch of senators.
Hindi naman nata nila pinagkakailan na talagang political process
talaga.
ang impeachment. Attorney Torreon, kayo po.
Yes. It is a political but at the same time legal. Because if you will purely consider it as political, then it will be not subject to any rules. There are rules that have to be followed. And one of which is that the rule which states sections 123 of the Rule 44, which states that a Congress has its own lifetime. And any and all proceedings shall end at the end of the term of that Congress.
Isn't that legislative proceedings, sir?
All kasi ang nakalagay dun, ma'am.
But isn't an
It does not-
impeachment a different...
Indeed. And
Kasi
you are probably
sabi nga nila
citing
sa-
Pimentel versus Joint Oversight Committee, which talks about a national canvassing. National canvassing is a predictable occurrence, whereas an impeachment cannot be applied because it is an unpredictable
It's not
occurrence.
predictable?
Yes, it is. It only happens when there is a complaint filed, but the canvassing always happens every 6 years, every 3 years.
All right.
So that is why Pimentel case is not applicable in an impeachment case.
How do you, as a last question, how do you remember all that? I mean, he talks like Article 7, Section 1, Paragraph 3, Number 2. Paano niyo ho naaalala lahat yan?
Gift
Just
of
on a
Allah.
light note, sir.
Gift of Allah po.
Grabe. Photographic memory.
Hindi naman
Alright.
po. Hindi naman po.
Maraming salamat po sa inyong oras. Attorney Bondoc, good to see you. Thank you for your time. Attorney Torreon, also, sana po maulit ang aming imbitasyon sa inyo. Maraming salamat po sa inyong dalawa. That's On Point. Join us again tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel. I'm Pinky Webb. Thank you for watching.